Okay there folks, we're kicking off season 4, not with a movie review, but I want to address the whole Spider-Man Marvel Cinematic Universe with Sony issue. Now, I'm not going to be narking, taking sides, yada yada yada, all that jazz. I'm not here to do that. You know that. But what I will say is, from the Sony leaked emails and whatnot, and I'm not going to get into the specifics or the politics of that. I leave that to people who have more time and patience for it, and it's not my place to comment on. I just want to comment on the issues in regards to Spider-Man's future with Sony and the potential future going over to Marvel. First of all, in regards to the issue of whether Andrew Garfield should stay or not, I am all for him staying. Now, the actor who plays Percy Jackson to take over as Spidey, I haven't seen the guy act in any amount of time, so I'm not going to make any comments, narcs, criticisms, naysays on him, because I haven't seen the guy act, so not my place to do it. But what I will say, in regards to the possibility of ousting Andrew out when, he is by far the best actor to play Spider-Man and Peter Parker combined. Now, for all the Tobey Maguire fans, let me just state this. He's a good Peter Parker. Won't discredit him for that, but he's not Spider-Man. He just wasn't. He didn't have the wit, the snarky cynicism, or the snarkiness, whereas Andrew Garfield nailed it on the first try. Now, a lot of people say, "Oh, Amazing Spider-Man 2 failed because he didn't dish out the goods." Okay, first of all, Andrew Garfield has no say in the script. Okay? That's down to the writers. If you want to point the blame of why Amazing Spider-Man 2 didn't do so well, point it in the direction of creative. I know I'm using a wrestling term there, but point it in the direction of the writers and the producers. Andrew Garfield is only going with the material that he's given. And for the material that he was given, he and Emma Stone were one of the few saving graces of that movie. Amazing Spider-Man 2 for me is a guilty pleasure at best. It's not the greatest Spider-Man movie I've ever seen. I think it's in the same kind of league category and rating of Spider-Man 3, and I'm not going to get into that because I've been there far too many times before, and I'll be darned if I have to go down that road again. It's been 7 years, I'm leaving it in 2007 where it belongs, along with the Spider swagger. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, trust me, you're better off not knowing. But I think if Sony does allow Spidey to go over to Marvel, given the financial misfortune that Sony is in, to my understanding, Sony still retain creative control over Spider-Man, so as far as I'm concerned, Andrew Garfield stays. Andrew would have no problem whatsoever being integrated into Marvel's cinematic universe with the likes of Chris Evans, Robert Downey Jr., Chris Hemsworth, Mark Ruffalo, and Scarlett Johansson. Because the type of humor that they've got in there, Spidey would interact well through Andrew Garfield's performances. So let's just forget that issue. I think replacing Garfield at this stage of the game, in regards to Spidey's current cinematic portrayal, I think it would be bad for business. That's just my opinion. Now, I suppose a couple of people have asked me, should Sony just give Spidey back to Marvel? part of me would say yes, because I think Marvel should have him back purely on the basis that he would then finally come into the fold. I do agree, no more, not another origin story, not at least for another 10 to 15 years, at least. The problem is when people tend to do reboots. I mean, in regards to what happened with Batman, between Batman and Robin and Batman Begins, I think a slightly more expanded origin story was necessary. But for Spidey, it's too soon for another reboot and another origin story. I think if they decide to reboot Spidey again, at least wait, like I say, 10 to 15 years. Because by that point, it'll be yet another brand new audience and another new generation that they can introduce Spider-Man to. Because at this stage, there are still plenty of people where, Spider-Man 3 is still fresh in people's memories. But again, not going there. And with the first Amazing Spider-Man only 3 years removed at this point, again, it's too soon. The biggest problem that Sony had in regards to Amazing 2, they tried to cram far too much into the space of 2.5 hours. Or 2.5 hours plus, if you wish to be technical. The Electro story I did enjoy, and Jamie Foxx did amazing, no pun intended, with the material that he was given. Dane DeHaan, although he's a much colder and creepier version of Harry Osborn, I felt they crammed and rushed things in, to the point where the writers didn't really have too much comprehension of what they were doing. So, I think Spidey should go over, but as long as they have Andrew Garfield reprise his role, because at this stage, until I see someone better than Andrew Garfield, then he should still be Spider-Man and see out the remainder of his contract. Because if Sony do sell the rights back to Marvel, which from what I've been hearing might be a possibility due to the fact that, they need the money. I'm only reporting on what I've been told. I don't know these for fact. But it'll just be the best thing for business, and because then they'd obviously have to hopefully buy out the actors' contracts. But then I hear about the idea of a Spider-Gwen and a Aunt May prequel story. Do we really need a prequel story about Aunt May? I mean, don't get me wrong. I like Sally Field as an actress. I think she's one of the best performers of her generation, and she's still got a lot left in the tank, but I don't need to see an Aunt May movie. Maybe have, if people want an Aunt May prequel story that bad enough, just do something similar to what they did in the comics once before, where you see Parker and Flash Thompson as pre-teens or pre-double digits, having to deal with their respective father figures and just how, diverse and contrast that they are. Whereas Flash's dad, was just a jerk and an alcoholic, and whereas Uncle Ben, was very nurturing, but he kept trying to get Peter to come out of his routine, or tried to make him something he's not, and he actually comes to that resolution at the end of that particular issue. And for the life of me, I don't remember what that particular comic book issue was, or what the comic book title was itself, so apologies in full on that one. So, that pretty much sums up what I think about the Sony Spider-Man situation. And of course, we get to things like Terminator, Jurassic World, and there's a Facebook notification. People like me. With Jurassic Park 4, I'm very excited and intrigued to see what they will do. Because keep in mind, as I've said in other videos, it's by next June it will be 13 years since Jurassic Park 3, and I'm curious to see what kind of innovations will have been made in not just CG but practical effects as well, and to see what kind of director Colin Trevorrow is, because Steven Spielberg hand-picked this man to direct this movie. And when you get talent like Bryce Dallas Howard and Chris Pratt, it does tell me that they are going to handle this carefully. And considering Jurassic World has been in developmental hell since the post-events of Jurassic Park 3, it does question as to why they took so long to try and put a movie like this together. But via the same token, sometimes there's a reason why it takes this long to get a movie done, because obviously the right script wasn't there when they tried to get it off originally, or it was just a case of the studio executives didn't like what they saw or what they read, and they obviously liked what they read for this one, because obviously we've got the big go-ahead, and I like the idea of the new Super Predator they've got in. And from what I understand, the original T-Rex is going to be in this, because from what I've seen through some shots from Jurassic World Twitter page that gave a link to Jurassic World Legacy, I think that's the correct site, they showed the T-Rex from the first Jurassic Park, and you can actually see the scars still on the right side of its body from its confrontation with the Velociraptors at the end of the first movie. So I like the fact that they're acknowledging little events like that happening, so I'm pleased with that. Terminator Genesis, I get the sense that they're just trying to cash in on the franchise's name and just starting afresh, because they know that Terminator 4 wasn't that great. I mean, it was okay. I personally thought it could have been better, but it is what it is. As for Star Wars 7, I'm going to be intrigued to see where they take this story, considering by that point it will have been more or less 30 years since the end of the events of Episode 6. And by the way, I'm still a little bit confused as to why they edited in Hayden Christensen over the original Anakin Skywalker actor, and apparently even Hayden didn't know about this until either someone pointed it out on the DVDs or somebody just told him, and I'm like, okay, I'm not quite sure why you need to do that, but okay. But with J.J. Abrams at the helms, you know it's going to be a good movie, and I look forward to that one. I'll see you in Ticket 2 for Season 4 of Real Features. Good night from the night.